Right now, a global bombshell. The Kremlin is under a sixfold attack. This secret US plan will bring Moscow to its knees. Shock, Trump has played his trump card. Russia is on the verge of capitulation. You need to hear this. Urgent, NATO has announced that something terrible has begun, a new catastrophe involving a Russian submarine right in the heart of Europe. Alliance troops have been put on alert. Air Force and Navy are going into battle. This has already blown up the internet. Shock, a decisive blow to Russia from Paris. France has decided the mega weapon is already on its way to the front. A bunch of gifts for the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukraine and the US have done the incredible. A new deadly development is bursting onto the battlefield. The Russians are already in panic. The Ukrainian Shahed is already in the sky. The fate of the war is being decided at this very moment. Frontline footage that's blowing up the internet. The Ukrainian armed forces are breaking Russia in Donbas. The occupiers are fleeing, equipment abandoned. The rout is in full swing. A sensation? The Kremlin is preparing a deadly strike from Engles. Ukrainian intelligence has leaked something unexpected, but the armed forces already know how to crush this plan. A fiery trap for the enemy. All this and more in our upcoming report. Hotspot. It happened. Trump is taking on Putin. The US is shifting its strike scenario from Hamas to Ukraine. This will force the Kremlin to capitulate. This has never happened before. The US has pulled an ace out of its sleeve. How Washington will bring Moscow to its knees. All the shocking details. Stay tuned.
Peace through strength. That is exactly how Trump characterizes his peace plan to end the war in Gaza. The American president has still managed to achieve peace in the Middle East. And although there is still much work to be done, Hamas is not planning to surrender so easily. This was Trump's triumph. Now he announces that the US will focus on resolving the war in Ukraine.
Trump doesn't want to waste any time. He is inspired right now and wants to move forward. He is determined to achieve new peacekeeping feats, God willing.
So what is the essence of the Trump doctrine? Pressure worked on Hamas. And it is precisely this lesson, as the Wall Street Journal writes, that Trump needs to take from the Middle East settlement. The lesson about the necessity of pressure.
To stop the fighting in the Gaza Strip, Trump put pressure on the Prime Minister. Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and in turn Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey influenced Hamas by threatening to limit diplomatic support for the group. At the same time, Israel's military operation in the Gaza Strip continued.
So far, there has been no similar pressure on Russia from Trump. And although the US imposed high tariffs against India and Moscow's trading partner, no new sanctions were introduced against Russia. But now experts are optimistic.
This inspires him to undertake peacekeeping feats. It's obvious. He has already announced that he will work on ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. After all, both the war in the Gaza Strip and the Russia-Ukraine war are issues directly tied to Trump's political reputation. And here, there is a positive momentum that can be used. And the fact that this inspires Trump is obvious.
Western media also believe that after an agreement between Israel and Hamas, Trump may increase pressure on Russia. Trump's own statements about his intentions to tackle the Russia-Ukraine war are also a good sign. And also the meeting between the Ukrainian and American leaders, which is scheduled to take place on October 17th in Washington.
Zelensky is flying to the States. Both Zelensky and Trump have already confirmed it, and our team has flown out to prepare for the visit. Well, they aren't saying what exactly will happen, but I'll say right away, peace talks. The meeting is important. It's not about technical issues, not just money or some minor details. This is part of the peace agreements. Those minor details are actually what could bring peace faster, what could get Russia to the negotiating table.
And in this case, Trump's peace plan to end the war in Gaza could become the necessary precedent that helps end the war in Ukraine. At the very least, some in Europe are hoping that Trump will use the tactics applied in Gaza to stop Russia's aggression.
This gives Trump enormous opportunities to resolve other major conflicts. Now he has established himself as an effective arbiter and peacemaker.
To resolve the Russian-Ukrainian issue, Trump may involve the president of Turkey. According to the American president, Erdogan is respected both in Ukraine and in Russia.
He is respected by people and he is my friend. You understand why I get along with the strong but not with the weak.
Trump says that Erdogan can help us achieve peace in the world. Trump likes Erdogan. And overall, Erdogan is a politician whom Trump appreciates, both in terms of his behavior and the established power structure. And Erdogan resolved the issue with Syria. Now the Syrian dictator and murderer is reportedly sitting in Moscow playing Sony PlayStation according to publications and Telegram channels. And in fact, Syria is now governed by those who fought on the side of the rebels. And this criminal was driven out and Russia lost its influence. Erdogan can help here.
But there is a significant difference between the war between Hamas and Israel and the Russian-Ukrainian war, the so-called China factor. The Middle Kingdom has become an important economic and political partner for Russia. And this could play into their hands or the opposite if Trump manages to get Beijing to support the negotiations. Then China could become a key element in persuading Putin towards peace.
Urgent news. An apocalypse on the horizon. A mysterious Putin submarine has surfaced in the Baltic Sea. NATO is sounding the alarm, aircraft are in the sky, and the fleet is preparing to strike. Swedish military have detected a secret Kremlin submarine. What is Putin planning? A new war or a provocation on a global scale? This could blow up the entire planet. Watch for all the details.
The Swedish Navy detected a Russian submarine in the Baltic Sea. The military reported this on the social network X. According to the agency, the vessel entered the Baltic through the Great Belt Strait and was later spotted in the Kattegat Strait between Sweden and Denmark. Air Force units and fighter jets escorted the submarine. The Swedes called this episode nothing more than a routine mission. The Navy did not disclose the name of the vessel. It is only known that it is a multi-purpose diesel-electric submarine of the Kilo class according to NATO classification. The same class includes the submarine Novorossiysk, with which the Russians recently embarrassed themselves in front of the whole world, when it unexpectedly surfaced off the coast of France.
In many respects, this is the best submarine not only in the Russian fleet, but in the world as a whole. Its engine runs more quietly than the sound of the sea outside, which means the vessel can remain undetected on NATO radar screens.
The submarine itself is so well designed that it's no wonder I call it the black hole. That is, detecting this submarine, I think, will be a major problem for any potential adversary.
This is how, 10 years ago, Russian propaganda spoke about the lead vessel of Russia's modernized submarine project. The Novorossiysk was built specifically for the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The media enthusiastically claimed that the vessel was capable of sinking an entire group of enemy ships. But now, in 2025, it seems the submarine itself is preparing to go under.
According to VHK-GPU, due to damage in the Novorossiysk's fuel system while on combat duty in the Mediterranean Sea, fuel is leaking directly into the bilge. There are no spare parts for repairs or qualified specialists on board the submarine. The crew is unable to fix the malfunction. Because of the serious accident, other problems have started to occur as well. The fuel accumulating in the bilge is an explosive hazard. The source believes that the crew has no choice but to start opening the bilge right in the sea.
In order to, as they say, solve the problem, there's no other option, they will have to pump this water-fuel mixture overboard. Well, basically, yes, of course, if this starts happening with aircraft, and undoubtedly the submarine is being monitored by aircraft anti-submarine aviation, the Mediterranean Sea is in general quite a densely populated area. With military ships from different countries, it will be easy to spot by the large rainbow-colored slick. In fact, that's exactly what everyone is watching for right now. But it should be noted that a submarine about 70 meters long is not that big, not such a huge volume. Although, of course, any environmental pollution is absolutely unwelcome.
Now, hundreds of international experts are monitoring to ensure that the Russians do not provoke an environmental disaster. The Russian Ministry of Defense is putting on a brave face, claiming there's no emergency, that everything is going according to plan. At the same time, they neglect to clarify what exactly the vessel was doing in the Mediterranean Sea, given that the withdrawal of the last submarine was reported back in January. And whether there are Novorossiysk caliber missiles on board, which the Russian army launches from such submarines. And most importantly, what the command isn't mentioning at all, is there any danger to the crew's lives?
Diesel fumes are explosive, especially considering that a submarine is literally packed with various electrical devices. At any moment, a spark could cause a fire and the loss of the submarine and its crew. For me, the main question today is, what exactly is the Russian Federation planning to save? Are they planning to save the hardware, or are they planning to save the people? In my considered opinion, in the unfortunate event of such a serious accident, the vast majority of the crew members should have been immediately taken off the ship, specifically off the submarine, leaving behind only a minimal essential team. Only those sailors who are able to fight for the vessel's survivability. And fighting for survivability first and foremost means that all the critical compartments of the submarine are completely sealed and secured so that there is absolutely no fuel leakage whatsoever. Throughout all the compartments of the submarine,
So far, hardware remains the top priority for officials at the Russian Ministry of Defense. And it's clear that the experience of the nuclear submarine Kursk, where 118 crew members died, has taught them nothing. Novorossiysk did not request assistance, and under the watchful eye of NATO anti-submarine aircraft, it is heading to the port of Kronstadt, where it is supposedly expected on October 21st. According to sources from a public channel close to law enforcement, during its watch, the submarine experienced 10 incidents. If Novorossiysk makes it to the base, the crew will be lucky and will be replaced by another. Whether the Russians will be able to revive the submarine is a big question.
Something incredible happened urgently in Paris, a decisive blow against Putin. This changes everything. Mega weapons are already on their way to Ukraine, and this is just the beginning. Paris is ready to make major investments in the production of Ukrainian weapons. You will be shocked when you hear the details coming up.
France, an ally of Ukraine in the fight against Russian invaders. The country manufactures drones and air defense systems for the needs of the Ukrainian armed forces. As Defense Minister Rustem Umerov emphasized, our country has combat experience, while France has a powerful industry. Accordingly, this ensures a mutually beneficial partnership for both sides.
There is no open data yet, because what is known is the cooperation on the Scalp missiles. For example, this is joint production. In the British version, it's Storm Shadow, and there's Caesar, which France supplies. Is there interest in Ukraine? Of course there is, because in Ukraine there is not only specific technologies that make it possible to wage next-generation warfare, but also tactics of use, experience, millions of records, for example, for artificial intelligence, which allow this to be used effectively on the battlefield. Of course, the French are very interested in this, just like any country that cooperates with Ukraine.
It was the French, together with the British, who came up with the idea to send peacekeepers to Ukraine in order to provide our country with security guarantees.
Foreign Minister Sikorsky said it very clearly, but what security guarantees are you talking about? Security guarantees. You must clearly state whether you are ready to shoot at Russians. If you are ready to shoot at Russians, then you should do it now, because Russia has already attacked Ukraine.
In truth, France did not immediately support Ukraine from the start of the full-scale invasion.
Gucha, they came together with Scholz and Draghi at that time, essentially to persuade Ukraine to surrender on Russia's terms. But when Zelensky took them to Gucha and showed them what had happened there, they realized that nothing would work out anymore. In the summer
of 2025, the Ukrainian Minister of Defense announced the creation of a new international initiative for joint arms production on the territory of the member countries of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group.
Let's carefully observe how this will be fully implemented, and we'll certainly see the specific details. I think comprehensive information about joint arms production will definitely emerge. Is actively scaling up production in European Union countries, primarily in Denmark, with whom we have developed a fruitful relationship regarding investments in the Ukrainian defense industry.
The initiative provides for the establishment of licensed production of Ukrainian weapons in partner countries in order to meet the urgent needs of Ukraine's defense forces. In 2024, the French and Ukrainian sides signed an agreement to launch the production of ammunition under license from KNDS, France Nexter. Thus, France is not only transferring old weaponry for Ukraine's defense, but has also established cooperation between its manufacturers and the Ukrainian armed forces for fundamental defense collaboration and the exchange of wartime experience.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Breaking news! Ukraine and the USA are creating a super weapon that could turn the tide of the war. A Shahed analog. The world has never seen anything like this before. A highly effective development is already set to change everything on the front lines. The enemy is already in a panic. How will this development shift the balance of power in the war? Watch for all the details.
The Ukrainian Shahed has reached a new level. Now the drone is equipped with advanced Western guidance and control systems, and production will be established both in the USA and in Europe.
It will soon go into mass production in Ukraine, the United States of America, and Germany. The press is reporting on this. The American company Autelion, together with a Ukrainian partner, has successfully tested the long-range kamikaze drone Artemis LM-20. The drone is equipped with an artificial intelligence system, self-guidance, and can strike targets at distances of up to 1,600 kilometers.
At the same time, the warhead weighs 45 kilograms, which is more than enough to destroy most enemy military targets, equipment, and hardware our military adds.
The key point here is that it uses artificial intelligence, and let's say the price is quite reasonable, to put it mildly. And if the tactical and technical specifications such as speed and flight altitude are met, and as I understand it, they are met, these factors have already been studied and tested, then of course things will become a bit easier for us.
It is also known that the main feature of Artemis is its navigation and targeting system based on the onboard computer Skynote N from the American company Autelion. As noted, it is precisely this system that allows the drone to target and strike even when satellite navigation is disrupted and ensures high accuracy in the final stage of flight.
The enemy's countermeasures are mostly focused on jamming the GPS signal. So, roughly speaking, this is what helps achieve more precise targeting. If we're talking, for example, about control channels, then yes, they do have certain systems that allow them, for instance, to limit the capabilities of piloted drone control channels. We're talking about a system that primarily performs automatic flight thanks to, for example, the onboard equipment it carries. That's why we're saying that thanks to these capabilities, this system can bypass the enemy's electronic warfare and hit the target with little to no error. Again, this is due to the visual guidance system installed directly on this UAV.
At the same time, the developers at the company have already announced that the drone has undergone battlefield testing. Both the Ukrainian side and its production partners have already recognized this.
This drone was developed together with an unnamed Ukrainian company for security reasons, and it has already undergone full-scale testing, which, according to the company's statement, included ground launch, navigation with and without GPS, long-range transit, and ground activation.
It is worth noting that the Artemis ALM-20 also features a nose camera, additional antennas, and apparently an electric engine, which experts point out is a rather unusual solution. This is done in order to achieve high results with smaller production scales by ensuring more precise targeting. After all, the camera at the final stage of the UAV's operation will allow it to strike almost without missing, including bypassing possible anti-drone defenses.
First and foremost, they will be intended for and used to destroy those targets that affect the military power of the terrorist state and its ability to conduct combat operations in Ukraine.
At the same time, joint production with the United States is far from the only international collaboration of the Ukrainian defense industry. Most often, Western partners are willing to invest specifically in drones. Denmark became a pioneer in the field of joint defense production with Ukraine and was the first to invest initially in enterprises in Ukraine, and now has allocated more than 67 million euros to establish Ukrainian defense enterprises on Danish territory. Finland was also among the first to engage in joint production with Ukraine. Back in November 2024, the Finnish defense consortium Suma Defense established a drone manufacturing facility in Finland in partnership with 4 Ukrainian companies. The United Kingdom has also focused on drones. Plans to launch joint production on British soil were announced several months ago by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
We are currently working out the details and decisions regarding joint weapons production with our partners. These are serious decisions with those who are providing the most assistance. Specific projects mean tangible benefits for our defense. In the future, there will also be production facilities localized in Ukraine, manufacturing that will help protect our skies. I want to thank our partners for their interest in this kind of cooperation with Ukraine and with our industry.
At the same time, the EU has allocated 1.5 billion euros for a defense plan in cooperation with Ukraine, Bloomberg reports. The main goal of the program is to optimize the procurement and production of weapons, including joint efforts with Ukraine. So it seems that the number of joint Ukrainian-Western developments in the arsenal of the armed forces of Ukraine will soon increase significantly.
Urgent. A frontline explosion. Ukraine tearing Russia in Donbas, breaking through the enemy's line, panicking, abandoning their equipment and positions. These scenes have gone viral. The fighting has become incredibly fierce, and every minute is deciding the fate of the war. Watch all the sensational details right now.
The main intelligence directorate of Ukraine is showing off its new equipment and openly announcing serious problems for the occupiers. Thus, the GUR has received several of the latest T-12 boats produced in Ukraine at its disposal. The 12-meter vessels, equipped with the latest navigation and radio equipment, two 800-horsepower engines, a top speed of up to 95, and a range of up to 500 kilometers, were handed over to the military by volunteers.
Hello everyone. Today we are handing over a total of 3 Tango 12 boats, which will soon be used by our fighters in the special unit. These are 12-meter boats equipped with powerful 400-horsepower engines. The boats can be used for a variety of assigned tasks. These include logistics, standard operations, assault and evacuation missions.
Thanks to these Ukrainian boats, scouts have managed to carry out more than one successful special operation behind enemy lines. Now the military promises there will be even more such raids. And it should be noted, for the occupiers, these are far from empty words. The enemy no longer doubts that the armed forces of Ukraine will go on the offensive. And it seems the occupiers have realized that this will happen very soon. That's why the enemy is doing everything it can to prepare to receive thousands of its wounded contract soldiers. This video was filmed deep behind enemy lines by Ukrainian partisans. A hastily constructed building in temporarily occupied Crimea is being designated as a hospital. Russia is being forced to set it up due to massive losses on the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia fronts. The influx of wounded from there has exceeded all expectations. As a result, the existing hospitals and field medical stations can't cope. Construction of the Sevastopol facility began in October 2022, and it was originally scheduled for completion only at the end of 2026. Now they're trying to finish it in emergency mode. The builders are working in 3 shifts, violating all technological standards, cutting corners on materials and safety, which leads to constant accidents at the construction site, according to Ukrainian partisans. Distortions in the structures and problems with the foundation are already visible. However, even under such conditions, wounded Russian soldiers are immensely grateful. After all, it's much better than being finished off by your own side right on the battlefield. By the way, that's exactly what the much-vaunted Russian air defense did just recently with its own fighter jet. It may provide cover, but it doesn't actually protect. The Russians accidentally shot down their own Su-SM aircraft while intercepting yet another swarm of Ukrainian drones. Incidentally, such confusion in Russian airspace will only become more common in the foreseeable future. And after the military, the Kremlin's air defense might accidentally start shooting down its own civilian airliners as well. And it's all thanks to Ukrainian weapons manufacturers who are constantly ramping up the production of strike UAVs and missiles. For example, the Flamingo is already being stockpiled for a large-scale strike on Russia, as announced by Ukrainian authorities in response to Putin's attacks on our energy infrastructure. So it's high time for Moscow and St. Petersburg to start preparing for blackouts.
The Flamingo can cut off power and water in any region of Russia. Right now, it's truly just fear, a primal fear about what might happen to them.
The preparatory stage for the future attack on Moscow was a nighttime raid on several Russian targets in the occupied territories. Donetsk was also under attack. There, large explosions were reported, likely at an ammunition depot. In addition, drones struck the village of Gvardeyskoye in occupied Crimea. An oil depot caught fire there. And it was loud even in Russia itself. In Sochi, an air raid alert was declared at night. There were explosions and air defense activity reported there. The city's mayor confirmed the attack. However, he did not specify whether the Ukrainian drones hit their targets, which gives reason to believe that the Ukrainian armed forces most likely achieved their objective in Sochi. In the same way, the enemy cannot hide from Ukrainian drones, even on the front lines themselves. In the past 24 hours, the Russian army has lost at least 700 soldiers killed and wounded, as well as 5 tanks, 10 armored vehicles, 35 artillery systems, and more than 1,500 drones. Nevertheless, Putin will not give the order to retreat. On the contrary, his generals are only increasing the intensity of the meat grinder assaults on Ukrainian positions.
The tactics remain unchanged. That is, these are small assault groups. 2, 3, 5, or 7 servicemen of the Russian Federation try to break through using some tree lines, advancing toward our front line. But thanks to our aerial reconnaissance teams, we detect them in time. So even as they approach, they come under fire from artillery and collective weapon systems. These include FPV drones and Mavics with drop mechanisms. In other words, we do everything possible to prevent them from reaching our front lines so they can't engage our guys in a firefight.
In the past 24 hours, there have been 187 recorded combat engagements between the Ukrainian Defense Forces and Russian troops on the front line. According to the General Staff report, the occupiers carried out up to 100 airstrikes on the positions of Ukrainian units and populated areas, dropping 206 guided bombs. In addition, they conducted 4,553 shellings, 118 of which were from multiple launch rocket systems. And here is how our defenders responded to this.
Over the past day, the aviation, missile forces, and artillery of the defense forces struck 14 areas where enemy personnel, weapons, and military equipment were concentrated, 1 drone control center, 6 artillery systems, and 1 important facility belonging to the Russian invaders, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
And here, our border guards have launched a hunt for the occupiers' vehicles and personnel in the Kursk direction. Our defenders are also harassing the enemy in the Kherson region. The pilots of the drone battalion are leveling enemy positions with their drops, destroying enemy FPV drones lying in wait, and burning shelters and positions of Russian flyers near the village of Vitoroy Liman. The Russians' ammunition cache was also hit, along with the personal belongings of the invaders themselves, and the enemy command post in this sector of the front.
Urgent. The Kremlin is preparing a deadly strike from Engles. Satellite images from Ukrainian intelligence have revealed a massive expansion of Russia's main airbase. What are Putin and the command planning? But the Ukrainian armed forces are already preparing a fiery response. How can Ukraine crush this plan? Watch for all the shocking details.
Russia is actively trying to revive its strategic aviation capabilities.
In October, Russia is stepping up efforts to expand its main strategic aviation base, Avia Vector. Military Observer.
At the Engles 2 airbase, new construction is underway. Concrete is being poured in the northern section, additional taxiways are being built, and 12 parking spots are being marked out.
The Engles 2 airbase is one of the main hubs of the occupying country's strategic aviation. It is from there that strategic bombers take off to launch cruise missiles at Ukrainian territory. In addition, a significant amount of missile and aviation weaponry is stored on the grounds of this base.
These engineering works began back in the spring. The active phase of construction has been ongoing for the past few months. It is likely that this is where the strategic missile carriers Tu-95MS and Tu-160, as well as the frontline bombers Su-34 and the Su-35 fighters, will be stationed. And at first glance, it might seem like ordinary construction work, but for military experts, this is a worrying sign. The expansion of the airbase increases the operational capabilities of enemy aviation, reduces the time between sorties, raises the number of combat-ready aircraft, and simplifies the logistics of delivering munitions.
These construction works at the Engles 2 airfield are first and foremost a demonstration. Following the significant strike by Ukrainian drones on March 20th, intensive and urgent construction efforts commenced on the 23rd. In other words, it is evident that the Russian Federation is actively attempting to demonstrate that this particular military facility is indeed a high-priority target and a crucial asset. Moreover, it is protected by air defense systems. So this is more of a political signal for the domestic audience rather than the external one, meaning Ukraine or the United States. It's an attempt to demonstrate that the Russian central government is in control of the situation.
At the same time, work is also being carried out at another airfield, Diaghilevo in the Ryazan region. The aggressor country is trying to restore the mobility of its air force and the density of its basing, reducing its dependence on individual runways. Additional parking spaces and taxiways allow for faster deployment of aircraft, increase the number of takeoffs, and reduce the time equipment spends in vulnerable positions.
With such extensive construction work being undertaken at these various military facilities, the Russian Federation is clearly trying to demonstrate to the international community that it consistently continues to view its so-called missile terror as a critically important and primary priority element of its overall military political pressure strategy on the leadership of Ukraine. In other words, lacking the ability to achieve real success on the front line, the main focus of the Russian occupation army is on strikes, including with the use of strategic aviation against infrastructure facilities on Ukrainian territory and against residential cities.
But expanding the bases is only part of the equation. Aviation requires crews, fuel, munitions, and secure supply lines. Losses among personnel, logistical problems, and international restrictions on components reduce the effectiveness of the new sites. Simply having more parking spaces does not mean more strikes in the near future.
And considering that the airfield is located about 600 kilometers from the line of contact, 600 kilometers from the notional Russian-Ukrainian border, it is within range of Ukrainian strike drones as well as other Ukrainian strike capabilities. We're talking about the Long Neptune. Therefore, if activity by Russian aviation is indeed recorded specifically from this airfield, there will be reciprocal responses from the Ukrainian side in the form of strikes against legitimate military targets. And this military airfield is a legitimate military target, both in the event of the use of American strike systems, should they be supplied, and accordingly a wide range of strike systems produced by Ukraine.
And these airfields have become favored targets for the Ukrainian side. In particular, in March, the armed forces of Ukraine carried out one of the largest attacks on Engles 2. An ammunition depot was hit, and about 96 air-launched cruise missiles intended for several rounds of attacks were destroyed. Strikes on fuel reserves also seriously weakened the enemy's capabilities. And while the enemy tries to expand its infrastructure, Ukrainian defenses are being modernized. If there is even the slightest activity threatening Ukrainian cities, our defenders will once again deliver precise and devastating strikes, depriving Russia of its last remaining aircraft.
That's all for now. For more fiery news from the front, tune in to our next episode.